One button down, two more to go. And not all of the blood fiends have been dispatched yet. Dante received another memory of Don Quixote, where someone spoke of another teasing them, to not joke as if they were on a fool's errand, that they didn't know of true adventure. They'll soon walk a path of suffering, its intensity unprecedented and monumental, asking if they didn't see the grand gate of adventure had risen, unlatched before them. So they told Don Quixote to shut up and resume preparations. They needed to leave quickly. Don Quixote saw that as quite odd, since when was Rocinante given the gift of speech? Then we get to where we left off. They all had their reservations. They took the path that Sanson opened for them, and they made it to Area 2 of La Mancha Land. Sinclair was worried about Jia Xichun and her group as they were assigned there, hoping that they were alright. Honglu believed that she'd be fine. He even had a funny family in-joke. Gregor wanted to hear it. Apparently where if any of his siblings managed to survive on their own up to the age of 13 in their household, they'd probably be fine, even if they were to be tossed out to the middle of the outskirts, laughing at this. What the is wrong with them? Their social Darwinism, and they're seriously up, and this is quite clearly the latter? Gregor was nervous about this, then changed the subject that they should hurry as Area 2 is likely to be as bad, if not worse, than Area 1. He was worried that he'd see something happen to his sister. Honglu would gather her remains and lay them in her final resting place when he returns home, whenever that might be. Jia Xichun would have done the same for him. Gregor could believe that. Then he asked if that place was a bit drafty. Dante saw that Area 2 had a place that felt different from Area 1. Area 1 being gaudy and overly decorated. Area 2 was teeming with an ominous, depressing silence. Ishmael saw that place as eerily quiet, almost spooky. Area 2 was called For Your Mental Health. Roger hopes that it was the good kind of quiet, asking if it's just quiet before Jia Xichun's fixers made it there first, and took out all the blood fiends. Dante felt pretty suffocated just to set foot there, not knowing who won the fight or if there was even a fight. Gregor didn't want to be added to the wall of missing persons posters. Sinclair asked how long they had until La Mancha Land closed. Yisang estimated 5 hours. Roger was encouraged by this. They're moving at a decent pace, asking if they're the first group that managed to activate their area's device. Ishmael reminded her that they did suffer some losses. Ortiz didn't see Hugo as a loss, as they just proved a traitor. Yisang admitted that it remained in his mind. They also were made to pass through the first area by Sanson's command. Roger saw him as a weird blood fiend. Sinclair was unsure why, but there was something familiar about him. Roger noticed that he spoke in a similar way to Ryushu. Ryushi was surprisingly quiet. She let out a cloud of smoke that lingered and turned into a bizarre shape. Sinclair saw it as a cute cat-shaped plume. It was actually him, weeping and sniveling. An expression of the consequences should he mistranslate her in the future. Dante wasn't sure what to say on this occasion. Then Gregor thought that the place in front of them was pretty neat. Dante asking what was it. Gregor noticed that on the map they had an infirmary. Guests injured on a ride, or needed a moment to calm down, or any blood fiends who were in urgent need of blood, help can be found there. Seeing it as nice of them. Sinclair reminded them that La Mancha Land was intended to be where blood fiends and humans could peacefully and happily coexist. He suspected that a long time ago, it really did work for a while, at least according to the descriptions on the map. Then again, it could be pure propaganda for all we know. Don Quixote saw it as bull, as she saw it as an impossible task. An adventure such as that can't possibly exist in any tale of Don Quixote. A place to coexist with villains? Seeing this is absurd. She then remembered a case that Siegfried once resolved. It was a battle atop a bridge. A big bridge? Anyway, the villains suggested a compromise that was devious, similar to what those that inhabit La Mancha Land proposed. In his case, they tried to seduce him with promises of riches and power, to have him fight for them instead. Yet Siegfried practically told them to go themselves, as he was on K-Corp's payroll, and he knows better than to make an enemy of them. His answer came in the form of a strong punch in one of the enemy's jaws. Ishmael wasn't impressed, as this was a 1-hour edit of that battle, seeing it as staged. Don Quixote continued that he declared that he basically couldn't be bought off. Well, that's because he was already paid by a wing. Why do you want to go away from that? After that, he fired off his super special laser beam cannon at them. Then, Utis brought to their attention something more worthy of their time, which was something of a relief for Dante. She saw remains of blood bags close to that attraction, the one called Haunted Bloody Mary. Roger asked if it's one of those haunted mansion attractions, asking Sinclair if they have actual... Sinclair, looking as if he was about to himself, told her to stop. His parents took him to an amusement park too, so she can't tease or scare him like... But it was a genuine question from her, as she's never seen, or rather been to an amusement park. Yeah, in the back streets of District 25, I can imagine that entertainment was a lower priority than, simple survival. Yi-sang understood this. Sinclair apologized for this misunderstanding. Rodier asked if they actually had ghosts. Sinclair was sure that they used cheap-looking animatronics or mannequins at worst. Massault, in his typically autistic way, told them that this kind of attraction admits guests of all ages, including children. No ghosts were in them. They installed various tools and visual effects to simulate fear. Or rather, stimulate fear. Yes, that's a better way of putting it. That more accurately describes that. Sinclair confirmed that they're family attractions. Then Dante received a memory of Don Quixote's, where a voice asked where her family was, her siblings. Apparently she never had anyone, not even on the day she was born. She knew only the cold, the loneliness. Then the other voice asked her to let them grant her the will to live. The family she shall be granted will forever be by her side, to come with them. It doesn't make a lot of sense now, but I'm sure it will with more pieces of the puzzle. Inside this attraction, Sinclair spoke that it's been so long since he's visited one of these haunted mansions. The last time he was at a place like that, he thought when the next time came, he'd be with his family again, not on his own like that. Roger didn't see him as on his own, he's with his co-workers. Heathcliff considered co-workers our kind of family. Ryushi's silence might as well mean, speak for yourself. Uwazis told them to shut up and direct their attention to the floor. There's something there, as she expected numerous signs of battle. Yisang smelled recently decayed bodies. It's been some time since the battle took place. They weren't fixers participating with them. Those bodies, I mean. Dante suspected that those that aren't there were turned into blood bags, shambling through the haunted mansion, but they didn't share this with the others, as it was bad for morale. But they did mention that there was blood everywhere. Then a recording played, which welcomed them with all his heart. Dear guests, to Haunted Bloody Mary. Dante heard the sound of that voice. It was coming from a portrait torn in half, likely a depiction of the kind of that castle, at least what the story was trying to convey. Ishmael noticed that it was torn up. Marsol observed that this was intentional. The narrator of this attraction told them that they found themselves in the castle of an ancient, once prosperous kingdom that had long fallen to ruin. They must explore every corner of that derelict castle to unveil the true secrets of the old kingdom. He warned that if any of them had a heart condition or couldn't handle horror well, to please reconsider partaking in that expedition. Gregor understood. Don Quixote struggled to contain that fear, squeezing Sinclair's arm tightly. He asked her to let go of it. Then the narrator spoke to Sancho, who wanted to tell him something. Apparently he missed a line, telling them to let the fire of courage light their way in that adventure of cold blood, or rather bone-chilling terror. Well, you get the idea. Ishmael understood that the tour started somewhere around there. The mirror was where the blood fiends used to hide to shock guests. The ceiling panel was also where an angry blood fiend leapt out of it, telling them not to explain things. If Sinclair had clean underwear before, he didn't have it now. This surprised Heathcliff as well. Dante nervously said that she was right. The angry blood fiend asked if she didn't understand that the real fun of that attraction was walking into a scare knowing it's going to happen, blaming her for not being a good guest. Ishmael didn't see it as that nice. Apparently, he was going to just let them through, but Ishmael was being such a harsh critic that they had to fight the blood bags and blood fiends that Jia Xichun's group missed. After the battle, Heathcliff asked if it was the last of them. or rather, the last of the blood fiends and blood bags of their immediate number. Don Quixote seemed to think so. It was in their favor. Ryushu disagreed. There was more. They were trapped rats inside that coffin, lacking even a morsel of shame. They opened the coffin, and this surprised the blood fiend inside, and several of them tumbled out. Gregor was speaking of Ryushu's lack of shame. Dante asked her if she could see through walls. She said no. She could only smell their cowardice. Their the blood fiend that tumbled out, along with the others, asked if they left. Honglu asked who he meant. He meant the monsters that came to hunt them. They smashed their rides and attractions. Honglu understood this to mean Jia Xichun's group, asking if they made it safely past that attraction. That blood fiend saw this as likely. Otis asked if they didn't get a good look at them. Apparently they had no choice but to hide, as their roles were to jump out and scare people during the banquet with blood fiends scene. But they stayed in the coffins, as Jia Xichun's group was even scarier. Normally visitors screamed and ran when they jumped out of the coffins, believing that they loved it, even taking pictures of them once they were done, offering to take a commemorative picture of them. For that spooky experience for 400 milliliters of blood, which is a non-lethal amount of blood with no danger to their health. He heard that they had to draw blood at times to renew their blood supply and keep things fresh and healthy, asking if they wanted to live long lives. Long, healthy lives. This angered Heathcliff, asking if he's serious. The blood fiend then made it clear that he didn't want to drink their blood. He didn't want to even to be part of that plan. He just wanted to get out of there, asking what happened to the one that managed to escape, regretting not doing the same when he had the chance. Dante was silently thinking about this. Faust reminded them of Cassetti, and this might be who they were referring to. The blood fiend asked if the outside would be any better, where he'd have to hide in sewers, hiding from humans. He's conflicted about which life is worse, seeing his options as dying or living a life worse than death. He cursed the La Mancha land. Clearly, he didn't know that it's like that for humans. After another series of battles, the narrator's recording played again, congratulating them for uncovering every secret of that kingdom. It's time that they leave, advising that should they face such terrors outside, to remember that they had bravery there and triumphed over them. Yes. Then telling them to give a warm welcome to the blood fiends of the attraction. Haunted Bloody Mary. They'll be there for the spooky, scary photo shoot with blood fiends. Ishmael saw that the attraction stopped there. They took care of all the blood fiends that was supposed to show up, so it made sense. Ryushu told them that he would have GUH, which Sinclair translated as gracious himself. Then a different voice spoke from the speakers, seeing the misfortune that every clue that may have shed light on the secrets of that tragic kingdom's past has been all pulverized by those that passed by previously. Dante noticed this, and it wasn't just the increase in the audio quality. Don Quixote identified the voice as Sanson's, who noticed that the blood fiend actors had all disappeared as well. Don Quixote told him that they brought righteous judgment upon them. Sanson asked if that also included the man responsible for the attraction. In the place of the photo shoots, a brief explanation about the secrets of the kingdom was in order, the excitement in his voice making it clear that he was expecting this, or to come to this. He spoke of a time long ago. A lonesome king resided within the towering walls of that great castle. He endured so many years in such a desolate place, it wore him down. Lonely mornings, silent nights. The king's heart forever a hollow void. The soul-crushing loneliness drove the king to yearn for a family. Desperately. So the king turned his wish into reality, forging a family of his own, blood-bound, to spend the rest of their lives together until the end of days. His love for his family was bottomless and generous. Soon that cold and desolate castle became a cozy home brimming with warm laughter. Yet even this didn't last. On one of these happy days, a knight from a faraway kingdom arrived at the gates of this castle. A traveller and a wanderer with hundreds of adventures and thousands of tales to tell. Oh, so more tales than Scheherazade, or however you pronounce that. And those tales were collected from outside of the castle. He had not spent his entire life setting so much as a foot outside the castle. He requested that the knight recount tales of those adventures to him, who had no reason to deny the king agreed to do so. This was somehow new and different, tales involving a voyage at sea, braving relentless waves, tragic tales of lovers, perilous encounters with unyielding monsters. Likely those that, unlike the blood fiends, are not open to diplomacy. He kept going as though the end was an idea that was inconceivable. The king refused to rest or even sleep. After he became lost in the tales of adventures, he came to a grave conclusion that his family confined to that castle can't fill the void in his heart, so the happiness was filled with tales of adventures, and his endless love that he had for his family grew in a different direction, towards adventure and the night. Along with what's outside the castle, his family thought it wouldn't last, that it would be fleeting, a brief whim where he saw himself as what he wasn't. He donned a pair of ragged boots and wielded an iron lance. Was that made of crystallized blood, as human blood is iron-based? They waited for the king to give them not only love, but the same void in their hearts. Yet, what came after from the king's mouth was bitter to their ears. He told them to bring down the castle walls, to make friends with those outside. The idea that their eternal home was to be brought down made them afraid, but their love made them help him demolish his castle. Their deed was done, spades in their hands, yet those who lived outside the castle were far too different from those that lived within. His family had to give up so many things: happiness, joy, ecstasy, pleasure, hope, anticipation, all to make friends with those outside. So happiness was outlawed by the king, because watching happiness of others wasn't going to make them happy. Happiness was something that had to be shared, which could be their own eventuality. All of their pursuits of happiness was considered a sin. Sanson asked why must they repent for their happiness. Sinclair noted that there were so many mentions of family, asking what was he trying to say. Ryushu called it a load of Heathcliff had nothing to say, as he never had a family worth talking about. Honglu thought this to be interesting, if family had any real happiness to begin with. Yes, he was asking about that, and Honglu, you're not one that can talk about this, as your family sounds outright toxic, considering that it's a great feat to survive until you're 13. That sounds like the autobiography of a serial killer. He spoke of this as if it was something light-hearted. Then Honglu noticed the exit sign, where the attraction ended. Dante also noticed something under there, the sign on the wall that had instructions written in bolded letters. All blood fiends must attend at least one weekly consultation session with the priest. Gregor wanted to know what that meant, as did Yi Sang. Roger suspected it to mean a confession, which would make sense in this context considering that a priest was mentioned. Gregor didn't see this as true anymore, but in the past, La Mancha Land put in quite the effort. Yi Sang agreed. They might once have dreamed of coexistence. Don Quixote's attitude to this was, well, it could be summed up by, no! People think I'm crazy, but that's... After a short walk, they came across a confessional, patterned after that which is normally found in churches of the Roman Catholic faith. In that case, the faithful consults with a priest where they confess their sins for the purpose of seeking absolution from them, usually via a penance of some kind. In the case of La Mancha Land, it had a different purpose. They found themselves in a quiet and solemn room. In front of it stood a group of blood fiends that was looking at them in anticipation. They were all injured and out of breath from a number of battles. One of them asked if they were there for the confession. Urtis wanted to know what he was talking about. That blood fiend told her that in that room, it was where there's one who would forgive their sins. Before they entered, they should take a deep breath and give an honest answer to his questions. He first asked how intense was their desire for blood today. 1, a lot. 2, mildly. 3, somewhat. 4, intensely, unbearably. 5, it's driving me insane. 6, it's killing me. Roger saw him as up. Don Quixote saw this as ridiculous. It's none at all. That blood fiend then asked if they consumed their hemo bar today. 1 for yes, 2 for no. Hemo bar is likely to sustain, or at least attempt to sustain themselves without the need to drink blood from humans. Sinclair didn't know what to say. Then the blood fiend told him not to cut him off. They need to answer all the questions to be granted audience with the priest, wanting them to explain their reasoning for not consuming one. He saw it as obvious, as it tastes like sucking blood from an insect would taste better than that, asking if they agreed. Well, Gregor could he could arrange that. His biomimetic arm has a healing factor. Roger understood that this blood fiend was quite mad. Dante ordered them to get ready as a fight was about to begin. The blood fiend, growing increasingly deranged, he asked, did they feel the parchedness in their throats when they looked at a human today? He alternated between saying yes and no a number of times until he finally shouted, "Yes, always, like I'm about to go insane." Then he denied that he even did for a moment. After that battle, the blood fiend that provoked them cried out that he had sinned, that he confessed, telling them to take him to the priest. Then it would be okay if he visited the priest when he felt the thirst. Ishmael asked if the priest was in the confessional booth. He told her to wait her turn. The other one sought the priest too. They must have been sinners as well. There might be a queue, believing that he'll be accepting their sins in their stead. Dante told them that they should probably check what's behind that door. Don Quixote offered to move ahead of them. Before Dante could react, Don Quixote shouted at the villains. Then Dante received another part of Don Quixote's memories, where she believed that the intruder will never leave them alone until they open the gates. That insolence must not go unanswered. The other voice said that she'll understand them when they create their own something, telling her not to worry. An end will be put to that today. Planning for this has been done for a while. When they entered, they saw a dying blood fiend that was near death. His mask was cloven in half, revealing the pitiful tragedy behind. That mask was unfit for purpose. The priest wasn't in good shape behind that mask. He asked if they're there to confess their sins, seeing it as a joy, as it is rare to find those that are willing to do this. Ryuji saw him as a smouldering stub, as in barely alive, offering to snuff out his embers with a gentle stomp, likely intending to smash his skull in with her foot. She was stopped by Jia Xichun, telling her not to touch the priest. He's hers. Jia Xichun looks like she was in pristine condition compared to the priest, implying that their injuries, if any, were mild compared to his. Honglu happily greeted his sister, who told him to shut the up. She had no time to waste talking to him. Honglu laughed this off. Clearly this wasn't the first time that she treated him like this. Gregor asked why keep the priest alive, as he's almost dead. All this new. He was being tortured. The device in Area 2 was activated, so she asked why torture him, asking if it's for more information. She confirmed this, while reminding them that she's not there to eradicate La Mancha land. Ishmael wasn't disputing that, as she doubted she was there to torture blood fiends for fun either. And Jia Xichun confirmed this as well, as they're not like the Fang Hunt office. It's not about money for them either. It's about inflicting as much pain as possible against as many blood fiends as possible. That's not why she's there. She's looking for a specific piece of information, and Dante wanted to know what this was. But they didn't think that she'd respond to this even if their question was translated. Apparently they arrived just in time. She was going to do to the priest what Heathcliff usually does to his enemies. Yes. Ryushu was about to smash his skull in. And Jia Xichun understood that in his dazed state no amount of pain would work. He was long driven mad from pain, asking Honglu if it reminded him of the tricks from back home that could induce such an effect. Honglu was silent at this. How up is this family? Now, Hindley wasn't liked much by Catherine, at least when all memory of her was still around, considering that she left for him in her last will and testament a warp train ticket to head to M-Corp's loony bin. But Honglu makes that family seem close by comparison. The priest was splayed out helplessly in front of the group as she was saying this to Honglu. Her voice was dripping with contempt, but her threatening tone didn't work on the priest. The look on his face was serene. He couldn't be more at peace. Seeing them reminded him of one of the visitors to his confessional. It was unclear when that was, but a blood fiend called Lorenzo was a repeat visitor to the confessional. At first, he was unsure why he would feel the need to visit him. He seemed so positive. Probably so positive that he might as well have Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves constantly in his head. Well, it's better than Always Look on the Bright Side of Life by Eric Idle. That song fills me with unfiltered rage, as it's the song of those who are happy and blissfully ignorant of a nightmarish reality. Oh, sorry, I lost it there. That'd be more appropriate for Honglu. Lorenzo told him that he was doing great that day. Those hemo bars really were some impressive inventions. He gobbled up 110 of them that day, in one sitting, seeing it as a record. Tragically, this positivity didn't last. As he later said that he licked the syringe for 3 hours, there was a droplet of blood on that. Considering the taste blissful, he didn't eat a single hemo bar that day, knowing those stupid bricks do nothing for them, and even the priest was aware of this, asking how much longer were they going to live like this. The priest answered that he already knew this. From endless forbearance comes coexistence. So sing and cheer louder. The more pain you feel, bury it. Suppress it with laughter. Let laughter never end there. At La Mancha Land. The Joker would be at home there. Sadly, that was the last time he saw a genuine smile on Lorenzo's face. It was moments before he was buried under that place, his head open, and his brain spilling. It made him curious. What was the meaning of burying someone who still lived? None would know the answer to that. He then asked about the fugitive Cassetti. Was he buried? He grabbed Don Quixote as he asked this, who told him to let go, which alarmed Dante. Jia Xichun was done humouring the priest, telling them to get out of the way, swinging her fan forward toward the blood fiend. Now the iron fan, or the taishan, was a weapon. The type of fan used varied depending on status and gender. The metal spokes on the fan was used for cutting. Sadly, he was nowhere to be seen, and Wei blocked the strike meant for Jia Xichun, stepping in at the last second to block that strike from behind. Yes, this strike came from the one that rescued the priest, which was Sanson, who considered the priest to be one with the most profound faith of them all. Jia Xichun asked when did, and Dante recognized him. Sanson described the priest's faith that everything would be alright, that it'll be as he willed it. Then they'll find happiness at the end, the only one that didn't turn his back on their suffering. He reached out to those that was losing grip on their patience, yet he wasn't able to tend to his own problems. He was alone in that room and withered from within. It was unclear how many knew this. Gregor was less than impressed by this mastered art of butting naturally into conversations like this. He's mistaken if he thought that he could just pluck away his friend again. Sanson was only there to continue the tale. This Don Quixote off, seeing him as there to distract them with his vile tricks. He denied this, as the vile tricks, as she put it, were for her. Only for her. Don Quixote was confused by this. He saw that there was enough misery for a tale. She had more riveting tales of adventures to share. She admitted to having them, but none that she'd want to share with him, making her hatred clear. Sansan believing that stepping onto the stage by herself was embarrassing, and this wasn't what she meant. Sansan ignored this, seeing it as no easy task to command the entire audience alone on the stage, and decided to assist her. Dante then received a memory of Don Quixote, who ordered Rocinante to halt, with a brief flash of an image with someone that was seen in a different timeline. She didn't want to leave, asking why Rocinante refused to obey her, shouting at the shoes to stop. Dante was unsure of what that meant, and even Don Quixote saw that and was confused. Sanson admitted that it slipped. It's been a while since his last show, and Roger wanted to know what he meant by that. Sanson saw that the order of things was off. When the play reached a crescendo and the swelling emotions sweep you off your feet, he apologized for this and started over with this part. From the day of the fateful duel against the Knight of the White Moon, Don Quixote saw it as one of the greatest battles that she had the honor of partaking in. She was unusually quiet. Dante understood that Sanson was at it again. That duel was the first meeting of Don Quixote and the Knight of the White Moon, which was the same night that would eventually guide Don Quixote to the river in the deep, to the river of oblivion. This caught Jia Xichun's attention. Sinclair made it clear to Dante that he suspects what's going on. Sanson told him to focus on their roles for now, asking Don Quixote if the Knight of the White Moon was the first to match her strength. She confirmed this. The background changed to that of a castle. She said that the knight was one of the truly impressive mights displayed, and Heathcliff was annoyed by this and basically said, "Oh, not again." Jia Xichun was struggling to find the words. Rodia was annoyed by this as well. Don Quixote saw that the Knight of the White Moon was dressed in an unfamiliar and ridiculous outfit, one who challenged her. She was impressed by the daring courage of her combatants. The knight wanted to test her might, as she was well known in the city. Sanson asked if she was the one who would accept that duel gladly. She would. She replied that she wouldn't run from this duel once challenged, telling the knight to, well, let's battle. Thus began the storm of blades, as her lance clashed with the Knight of the White Moon's greatsword. Sinclair had what looks like a great katana from Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, in his hands. With every duel, no matter how great or trivial, comes certain stakes. This was no exception. Sinclair didn't care who won or lost, but should she meet his challenge in a fair duel, he promised her that in his hands was what she sought the most. Boldly and fiercely, they clashed once again. Rocinante signaled the start of the duel, because if anyone was watching, it would be him. Gregor was annoyed to be back in the horse costume. Yes. Don Quixote told them that for 3 full days, they tested the might of their blades. And Sanson then asked, wasn't she wielded a lance, not a bladed sword? Don Quixote saw it as a figure of speech. What followed was a scripted battle between Don Quixote and a cutout of the Knight of the White Moon. There was a number of clashes involving Don Quixote's lance and the knight's great katana and energy bow. Likely a bow that generated a short-lived hard-like construct when fired from it, until one of them caused the scene to fade as they clashed with each other. Don Quixote spoke of how even the match was. No clear winner emerged. Every spectator's hands began to grow slick and anxious with sweat. Some gathered to cheer them on. Ryushu cheered Don Quixote, and this was amusing to Heathcliff. Then Honglu, in a frilly purple outfit, cheered the Knight of the White Moon, telling that knight that they've got this. Don Quixote's tip of her weapon hewed deep into the knight's left shoulder, while the knight's blade left a slight gash on her ear. Sanson asked if she was alright after being wounded in the duel. She told him not to worry, seeing it as a seedling of honour, no blemish to her. She believed her skills to be slightly superior to the knight's. If she didn't hold back, she would have dealt a lethal blow. Sanson spoke on how they changed again changed their tactics and then charged at full speed to see who shall emerge victorious in that epic duel. Sanson told them that the victor of this fight was... Sinclair asked who won. Don Quixote said, neither. It was a draw. Sanson asked if the duel resumed. It didn't. She might be a great adventurer, but she's not viciously ruthless. She asked the Knight of the White Moon. They had duelled for 3 full days, and fatigue had set for many, asking the knight to rest and recover. They can't continue to duel in that state. Even the spectators needed rest. It would be cruel to force them to forego sleep to see the outcome of that duel, asking if Rocinante agreed. Gregor said that he agreed, after Sanson forced him to do so, of course. Then Sanson made him say that he had no response. He was just a pair of shoes. Sanson then made Gregor say that he was wondering when that pointless battle would come to an end. He prepared some refreshments, suggesting they enjoy them. Sanson then announced that the long duel came to an end, asking if it was true that neither was victorious. Did it truly end in a draw? Don Quixote confirmed this, which was highly irregular, although she claimed that the true victor was herself upon the final clash, as her lance was pressing forcefully upon the knight's blade, yet she was generous and offered a truce. Sanson then said that she compromised on that truce, with no promised end date, asking what happened next. They became friends. Sanson saw the friendship forced by clashed weapons was cliché, despite how rare that was. Sanson asked her if her wish came true, just as the knight boldly proclaimed. Don Quixote was uncertain. Well, it looks like Area 2 is taken care of, but there still is more to go before proceeding. Until next time, hail the rabbit!